We are back with more college football coverage, and in this one I'll be covering the Week 10 recap. And I am a little late to it. Also, similar situation of last week in the fact that for the longest period of time still to this point, everything is not necessarily working in this space. I had to utilize the lone television in there. But I tell you, man, you still gotta love what sports is fucking offering, because there was so much shit going on, and then after the whole thing, just damn, you gotta love this shit. It's fucking wild. Now, all the games that I intended to truly talk about, with that in mind, I had to constantly flip back and forth, so I didn't catch the entirety of every single game. But I did the best that I could. The main game that I did go in there and watch was number 1 Ohio State versus Penn State. Originally, that was going to be one of the games that I would have talked about, but that just, no. We knew what was going to happen there. And even though they did make it pretty interesting, forcing a fumble early in the first half and getting a free touchdown off of that, No, not even close. The result is exactly what it was. I don't need to get into all the numbers. I don't need to tell you how that game went. You knew exactly how it went. You know about just how great that team is. I don't need to spend this one telling you about that. Because again, with already having that in mind, it's like there's no point of putting those people in a situation where they have to constantly relive it. But in the midst of me doing all that and also handling some other stuff, the first game I was going to watch was Vanderbilt, number 9 Vanderbilt, versus Texas originally. Or I should say at Texas, rather. They were in Austin. This one was weird from the moment I tracked it. Figured that Texas was going to take the first drive and score, but a damn 75-yard touchdown to start it off? Okay. And then, as I'm just tracking it, the score is just constantly getting increased and far more outlandish than I would have anticipated. This is the highest ranking that Vanderbilt has had in decades. And they find themselves in a spot where they get down by as much as 24 in this game. Heading into the fourth quarter. For as great as they had been playing all season long, I couldn't have seen that coming at all. Just for a glimpse of Tom in that game. They reverted back to their ways of normalcy, I guess, when it comes to the Vanderbilt football team. It was so wild. And I was tracking a few numbers here and there, and Arch Manning was playing well. Truly was. One of the better performances, if not the best performance of his career to this point, you could argue. And it looked like Texas was just primed to continue steamrolling right over them into a victory. Yet, the competitive nature of the SEC, especially when you get to these gritty football teams, as a lot of them tend to be, it did not come so easy for Texas. They charged back. You get one touchdown here, and it ends up being 34-16. Then they miss a field goal, and then the Longhorns give up a fucking 67-yard touchdown to the tight end I would see in post. I still wasn't watching the game at this time, but I'm seeing them creep back in, and I'm like, okay, that could be interesting. Now, I got in watching it on this Texas drive here that followed this, and I figured that they would just try to consistently run the ball down run off as much time as possible. And to be granted, that is what they got themselves into. They forced Vanderbilt to use all of their timeouts by the end of this. But, man, they could not pick up a first down to save their lives here. So Vanderbilt, with around 3 minutes left, had a chance to get themselves within a possession. And I'm just trying to state this the whole time as I'm watching this go down, because anything is possible. But for the most optimal chance at this, in terms of actually trying to tie or win the game, Vanderbilt needed to score before the 2-minute warning. I don't care about the fact that in college there's a stoppage after first downs following the 2-minute warning. I don't care about that. You gotta try to drive down the field as quickly as you can. And yes, that's not necessarily what Vanderbilt is predicated on, even if they did just have a 67-yard touchdown catch. But they needed a few chunk plays in there. And granted, they would get them over time, but they took way too long. They got way too long. Now, the Texas defense was in a favorable position with having Vanderbilt backed up that far in there towards their own end zone as it was. Then one of their edge rushers got a sack right on cue. So on 4th and 19, you're definitely forcing up a desperation throw. And somehow, some way, it was short of the line of the game, but Sherrill made all the extra moves he needed to pick up the first down. But they failed the mission already. It took them 7 seconds into the 2-minute warning. So now you don't have that cushion anymore. Just 1 minute and 53 seconds left in the game. Just to get the first down on that drive. They already failed right then, right there. But they did have some good chunk plays here. Just spamming it over to other wide receivers like Richie Hoskins, the fifth, and also Stowers repeatedly, before having Richie Hoskins, the fifth, get himself an 8-yard touchdown catch to make this a 3-point ball game. They had to rely on the onside kick either way you slice it. There was no avoiding that. But, man, in a moment that they are absolutely going to want back, they damn near recovered it. They kicked it right to Livingstone, and for a receiver who seems to have okay hands, he let the ball slip right past them. And you had multiple Vanderbilt gunners on this special teams unit just charging at the ball, trying to grab it. But it continued to get knocked back further and further and closer to the boundary, and yet still no one could get a handle on it. By the time someone, in fact, multiple Vanderbilt people, including Hoskins the fifth, being involved in this play as well, tried to converge and secure the ball in their midst, it went out of bounds. And they checked to confirm it. It was sent to New York. They confirmed that it went out of bounds before anyone could get possession of it. And just like that, that would end the game. The Longhorns would get themselves a 34-31 upset, if you would call it that. Even though teams would mostly expect Texas to win this game anyways. It's just like, man, there are still so many questions about it. Like, what the fuck was going on with the Texas defense to the fact that you give up 21 unanswered points in just one quarter of play alone? And if not for just being so clumsy in terms of recovering it, this game could have had a completely different outcome because of that ineptitude on that side of the football. There's absolutely no excuse for that. And if you face off against them again, per se, or face off against another really good team and you try to pull off that shit, you aren't getting away with that again. I could promise you that right now. For Vanderbilt as well, when you think about it before I get into the numbers, yes, they got absolutely fucking dog-walked in the first 3 quarters of play. But, hey, even with the CFP committee potentially taking that into account, because Texas is very much in the conversation for it now, if Vanderbilt still happens to be in the conversation down the line, I mean, they're going to look at the fact that this was still a pretty close ball game. And again, they were an onside kick recovery away from potentially changing the complexion of this one. So it definitely is a huge loss for their momentum. But at the same time, this could, depending on the criteria that constantly changes with the selection committee, they might view this as a good loss. For the numbers, like I said, Arch Manning was on the money in this one, even without me watching those drives go down. 25 of 33 passing for him for 328 yards and 3 touchdown passes. Also have 4 rushing yards on the ground. Quintrevion Wisner had 18 rushes for 75 yards and a touchdown. And Ryan Wingo had 2 receptions for 89 yards and a touchdown, while Emmanuel Mosley, the 5th, had 7 receptions for 69 yards and a touchdown. As for Vandy, Pavia himself had 365 yards, 3 touchdown passes, and a touchdown run, with 43 yards on the ground to add a lost fumble in as well. Not the worst game in the world, but their overall rushing was just not great. Like, it's usually been that good, but Texas's front 7 certainly held them in check. Amongst the running backs here, they had 10 combined carries for 15 yards. It was a sloppy day at the office there. And with Vanderbilt, again, being so hell-bent on establishing the run in these games, that definitely worked to Texas's advantage as soon as they started limiting those opportunities. Eli Stowers in this game had 7 receptions for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Richie Hoskins, the 5th, had 5 receptions for 54 yards and a touchdown, while Sherrill had 5 receptions for 83 yards. Just another wacky day at the office containing another ranked SEC matchup. And that wouldn't even be the only one of the day, rather. Now, I was flipping in to some other different action. Just a lot of madness going on at this time, because I am trying to account for this next game in Arizona State, Iowa State, but at the same time, you have some other games that were a little more demanding at this point. For some reason, Duke was beating Clemson, and they managed to do just that. You had SMU get one of their better wins in quite some time, because Carson Beck, in the clutch, literally cannot throw an accurate pass to save his life, and because the Hurricanes consistently get in November and December under Cristobal and don't do a goddamn thing, man. You can't make that up. You also had Virginia was trying to monitor that game, and they took down Cal. It's just awful, man. Like, I don't know how this is being allowed. They gotta stop this shit, man. Like, what are we doing? They're not that good. They're not that good, bro. I promise you. But as for this Arizona State, Iowa State game, it got off to a later start because it was on TNT. And again, while I didn't watch the whole thing here, I did watch it towards the tail end. Now in this one, to my knowledge, after watching through it a little bit, Sam Leavitt would miss more time in this game again, so leaving Jeff Sims to start once more. And we know what happened in that damn Utah game when he started. It was not fucking pretty. So I had very low expectations, but Arizona State was very much in the game, surprisingly. And then they gave out a little bit of context. You see, before I had even cut on the game, they were consistently battling back in terms of trying to fend off Iowa State for as long as possible. Both teams were somewhat turnover prone. There were just a lot of early miscues that both teams had to overcome. Again, not the cleanest game in the world. But as I cut it back on and try to finish the thing out, we get into the third quarter here. And before that point, this man Jeff Sims had a fucking 88-yard rushing touchdown. I'm like, huh? Then to make things even more interesting, they continued to run him. Now, granted, as I said, Sims is a person that came from Georgia Tech and Nebraska. It don't get much more triple option centric than those two schools right there when you look at their entire history. It just doesn't. What are you going to do at that point? But I tell you, for a good number of times, man, it was tricky. At some points, it felt like he was unstoppable, but at other points, it just didn't make any sense. Like you had Brown to start off this drive right here getting a massive gain, and then he got stuffed. So, okay, second down, you're already at a disadvantage, and I guess that worked right into Iowa State's hands. You're definitely going to want to test that man throwing the football. Surely enough, this ended up being an incomplete pass. It didn't even have a chance. And again, yeah, you want to have faith in Sims and make him do what he does best, but why are you calling a fucking third and long quarterback run? That certainly ended up failing, and hey, there you go. That was that. I didn't watch this Iowa State drive. Again, constantly flickering back and forth in between action. But Carson Hansen, if nothing else was going all that well for Iowa State, he continued to put together some pretty great work on the ground for them, and his efforts led to them eventually having to settle for a field goal. Stupid penalty pushed them back out of a goal-to-go situation, though, as unfortunate as that was. But, hey, at least they still get themselves within one possession. In a game that close, there's value in that, especially as they headed into the fourth quarter. And it was just sloppy football all around. They both tried to play a smash mouth style, but really, both defenses didn't relent all that much in terms of their resistance. Like, Iowa State themselves could not really move the ball that much early on. And while Arizona State would have a little bit of progress, they themselves just constantly shot themselves in the foot. Like, they had a promising start to this drive right here, and plus territory. They were on Iowa State's 40-yard line when this drive started off. And you mean to tell me that you get into a fourth down situation early on? They had the right idea in terms of going for it, but I mean, I don't even know how to explain this incomplete pass. He throws it right to the defender, leaping in the direction of the throw. And it ends up being incomplete. Ironically enough, the receiver that he was throwing it to at the time, if he finds a way to get around that throw, because there are ways to get around that. I don't care how covered it might have seemed. There were ways to get around throwing it past this dude. And again, Sims, once you make him drop back, something just isn't registering. I don't really know how to diagnose. It's terrible. And if you think that's bad, it would just continue to get worse. Again, the defenses bought them both tremendous opportunities to make something happen. So this damn interception by Crook gave them yet another chance to redeem themselves. However, for the good contributions that Sims had, at least in running the football, because he actually in this game, as the graphics stated, he had the second most rushing yards by any Big 12 player in a game this season. And would end the game with fucking 29 rushes, by the way. Spamming the hell out of that shit. And again, at moments, yeah, you can understand it. However, if Sims is so accustomed to doing this, how the fuck would he manage to leave the ball exposed on this one? It was the worst possible thing he could have done, and surely enough, he paid the fucking price for it. Because he got ball stripped right out of his arm by one of the Iowa State defenders. And they managed to get it back. We're nearing the halfway point of the fourth quarter at this point. And Iowa State, if they managed this drive correctly, man, they had a massive opportunity to continue bleeding time off. But, sadly, Arizona State, and more specifically, this defensive lineman in Woodley, bro, he was all on their asses in this game. He legitimately was not a force to be reckoned with in this one. He beat the fucking block more often than not. And every time that happened, some negative or consequential play resulted for Iowa State here. It was no different on this drive. And as a result, they had to punt. Surely enough, Arizona State would get themselves in a similar spot despite making Iowa State burn all their timeouts and wasting away the 2-minute warning. But hey, you put Iowa State on the aggressive offensive. They have no other choice but to score here. And they can't continue to rely on Carson Hansen or that rushing attack all that much. You're forcing Beck now to go and be clutch. And to be honest, they had some solid passes going. They got decent field position, and they took advantage of it rather quickly. They did convert timely downs when they needed to, especially this 4th and 1 here, to keep the drive alive. Yet, when another 4th down came up, it would be demoralizing. Now, I'm not going to lie, the play call was good. Soul has been one of their more consistent wide receivers, I suppose. Or at least he's definitely one of their main guys. So, I guess he wasn't necessarily wrong to put it in Soul's hands, right? But the fact that this is an out route, the fact that they're backed up, and Soul, for whatever reason, just decides to give himself up just right around the line to gain, would prove to be a very, very tough decision to make. Because they ruled him just short of the 1st down. Even though I thought to myself that he picked it up. No. You can't necessarily get a call like that in college when you are actively giving yourself up. And so, at the process of which it started, he was short of the line of the game. They gave him that call, and in an anti-climactic fashion, even with them making tremendous strides down the field, Arizona State would once again pull out a 1-score victory and get themselves a 24-19 win. For the numbers here, Sims, again, 177 yards, a touchdown and an interception on 54.2% completion. Those aren't gaudy numbers at all. And it does make sense as well that it was going to be a little more limited because, to my surprise as well, Jordan Tyson was not in this game either. It's a very strong win for the Sun Devils when you look at it that way. But this ground attack from Sims, again, if nothing else, you're going to find success there. And as a team with just he and Brown, they had a damn near combined 300 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, with both coming from Sims on the aforementioned 29 carries and 228 yards by himself. He's a pretty built dude. Damn near reminds me a little bit, obviously more toned down, but I'm sure that people remember KJ Jefferson to an extent. Similar kind of player there, and he just used all that shit to his advantage, apparently. Because who the fuck is trying to bring him down? Clearly, they have consistently failed at their job. If you're giving up a huge burst like a damn 88-yard touchdown run. But that's neither here nor there. Mateer had 6 receptions for 68 yards and a touchdown. Moss had 3 receptions for 52 yards, and McLean had 2 receptions for 49. As for Iowa State, Rocco Beck, 186 yards on 50% completion, a touchdown, and an interception. Carson Hansen, meanwhile, had 18 rushes for 113 yards, and Saul had 6 receptions for 85 yards for the team, while Brahmer had 3 receptions for 48 yards and a touchdown as well. And again, it's a strong win for Iowa State. It's just kind of stuck for Iowa State, though. The fact that they started off so well this season, had an undefeated record for, again, the earliest part of this time, and to just crumble like that to opponent after opponent, it's just gotta be a very tough feeling. I don't know how they would even manage to shake back from that. It's kind of tough. Man. But at least they can say that they did keep themselves in the fight for long enough by forcing the action. At least they can say in their situation that they truly put out and put on a fight. They can give themselves that credit. I wouldn't be surprised at that. But, man. Bruh. What can I even say about this game? I was intending to watch the whole of number 2 Indiana at Maryland with Malik Washington facing off against this Indiana team. And again, it was going to be a pretty interesting first impression of him. You know, I've heard decent things. He's had some good performances this season. There's been a lot of bad. It makes sense for a true freshman. So you have to take that in stride. He's going to eventually learn, but it was going to be good to get to see him get some reps out there for the very first time, at least, of my perspective this season. However, again, as much as people wanted to have faith in him, I understand that you're going to support the team if you are a Maryland fan. I do get it. But to have people consistently say that Maryland was going to absolutely walk this Hoosier squad down was just like absolute delusion to me. It's like you're expecting him to have a completely flawless game, and you are expecting this Indy team, who is scorching hot, to go out and lose to Maryland on this day. I just didn't see it happening. At the very least, I thought it was going to be competitive. Competitive? Competitive. The very first play I saw in this game, as soon as I cut on and switched over to CBS, was Omar Cooper Jr. pull off a fucking nasty double move on one of the Maryland cornerbacks. Completely lost his ass. Mendoza the fifth, literally just, like, he didn't even have to put that much effort into the throw. The man had him beat terribly. And Omar Cooper Jr. got a 22-yard touchdown catch off that. That is the very first play that I saw, and that seemed to be a microcosm of exactly how this game was going to be. That play right there. But it does get progressively worse. It does. Now again, that makes sense. You have this defense in Indiana, which definitely gets its fair share of credit, with a lot of more experienced people on their squad. And they are expected to just allow this true freshman to walk all over. That wasn't going to happen. Like, some of the first few drives from Maryland just didn't really go anywhere all that much. They were all over it. They tried to get Malik Washington out on a few runs, and again, by the time he got to the outside, there were already a swarm of defenders there. There's nothing he can do about that. You can't necessarily hold that against him. He definitely had a few tough misses on these drives as well. And also, the rushing game outside of him wasn't established. Meanwhile, their former running back in Hemby was running wild the whole fucking time. And it wasn't just him. The backup to the backup for this Indiana team, in terms of the running back position, they are just tremendously elite there. You have to give the offensive line tremendous credit as well. They set some very good impact blocks, and it opened up a ton of room for them to just continue churning out yardage. Eventually, in this half, the first half, it ended with them being down 20-3, the Terps, that would be. This was definitely the best Maryland drive of the day, and I mean, granted, to open up the third quarter, they needed something like it. You know, you saw what the talk was surrounding Malik Washington here. I mean, he got a great fucking pass out of the backfield despite having pressure get over there to the running back out of the backfield. And then, on the very next play, as I note, the man had to pull off a little bit of improv because Washington was scrambling over to his left. Williams kind of pivots upfield a little bit, and he throws an excellent pass over to him. Man skates all the way past the sideline, and by that point, Williams is in the end zone with a 55-yard touchdown catch. Just like that, it's a 10-point ball game. You think it's smooth sailing. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. The next few minutes, and honestly, the rest of this quarter, would proceed to be absolute hell for Terps fans out there. It was just, like, there was nothing pretty about this shit. It was bad. They only needed one pass, the Hoosiers, one pass on this drive, and it did not matter. Because the rushing attack was so fucking lethal in this damn game. The backup man in black managed to have 3 different runs on this drive in a row, get substantial yardage, including a 31-yard touchdown run. So that was already bad enough, and you want to know how Maryland followed that up? They had 2 different drives and with bubbles. 2 different ones. Now this one, that's just Malik Washington, again, not truly understanding the full ins and outs of a game yet. Because if you are going to run the ball like that, fine, sure. Or the fact that the man got tackled in the backfield and then left the ball exposed to the extent that you have this shit leaking out like this, you know how easy it is for a person to rip that out of your hands, and that's exactly what would happen. Boykin managed to get a scoop 6 off that. The next one was just the icing on the cake. All Malik Washington was doing was trying to complete a pass, and they blew the RPO screen up. In a way, Smith tried to make somebody miss, and to his point, he kind of did. The man was literally running past him, seemingly away from him, until he just put a hand, maybe even a finger on the ball, touched it, and it fell out of his hands and right into the hands of the swarming Hoosiers defense. Then that led to a very short but obvious touchdown on this drive, scored by none other than the Maryland transfer in Hemby. And by that point, if that play to open up my watching of the game kind of displayed how things would progress in this one, that entire sequence after the Maryland touchdown in the third quarter just completely killed all hope in that stadium. We get into the fourth quarter and Indy gets a couple more touchdowns, just running it up. And by that point, this was Maryland's homecoming game. By the end of that game, with the amount of fans that were cleared out of their seats, you saw only few people in there, at least from the views that they had on the television, on the broadcast. Maybe there were a few more people in that establishment than they might have let on. But you couldn't even tell that that was the festivity at that time. Indiana ran them out of their own house. 55-10 beatdown. And it would set even more history for this Indiana team that just is damn near, you could argue, gonna be on a collision course if they can keep this up. Seeing as conference championships in this conference now come down to the top two with the end to all divisions, per se. They are on a very apparent collision course. There's no denying it. Set even more history for them. This is their first AP top 5 win as a squad on the road since 1945. 80 years ago. And they had to do that to them in College Park. It's tough. Also set a school record for wins in a season, putting up more than 50 points with 5. They just beat the shit out of football teams. Now, it would be a subjective opinion of your own as to whether or not Maryland is really good or not, especially with all the shit that I just consistently hear about them continuing to fade after the month of September. And I suppose that is a different story for a different day. I'm not going to play that game. But what I will say is that Maryland had to deal with the Mendoza first, because for the 4th time in this season, both Mendoza brothers, in Fernando V and Alberto, who managed to pass for a touchdown in the same game. Alberto also had a 53-yard run in garbage time, and I'm like, man, you got to get your fucking speed up. He tripped over himself, but he damn near managed to get in for a score. I'm like, okay, fuck it. Yeah, there's just too much The balance is elite. Mendoza, the fifth, even with a sloppier game, managed to just lead a truly sound unit. And from there, everything else works itself out. Like, Hemby himself did get the revenge touchdown, but he wasn't even the most prolific running back on his own team. And as a unit, the Hoosiers had 369 yards on the ground and 4 rushing touchdowns. Even with that Omar Cooper Jr. touchdown, the passing game isn't even worth mentioning because the rushing attack did exactly what it needed to do. And you compare that to them limiting the absolute fuck out of Maryland and what they were trying to do on the ground. 37 rushing yards on 2.2 yards per carry. When is that ever going to get the job done? Especially against a team like that who is definitely dictating ball control with what they are doing themselves. You stood no chance if that's how you were going to come out. And with Malik Washington being a true freshman in that situation, I mean, yeah, Indy wasn't about to let him take over the game, but at the same time, if you're Maryland, you got to understand that, and you got to do more to put him in the best position possible to at least have some help by his side, warm him up into certain reads, and then at ideal moments, let him go crazy. That's how you got to work it. You cast Malik Washington right into the fire without a true game plan for him to attack this team, as if it isn't already hard enough to do that generally. And as a result, he put together, again, a very tough performance. 242 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions on 51.6% completion. It's definitely not great. And again, I can't cast all blame that way. Still, though, it is all a learning process. And in Tom, he could definitely fare way better in situations like this. But again, unwinnable to have to deal with this team at this time in the season. And they just got the absolute worst of every aspect of this. It was, again, it was ugly for them. It was terrible. Like, there's no getting around that. All right, man. Moving on to number 18, Oklahoma versus number 14, Tennessee, I believe. Because where was this played? Oh, no, this is at Neyland Stadium. Okay, so number 18, Oklahoma at number 14, Tennessee. My fault. The one thing that Heupel has consistently gotten credit for over his tenure as a coach is being able to win these kinds of games at home. And I mean, it's always electric in Tennessee in SEC conference games down the stretch of the season. It always is. You've seen that throughout the years. So that's not surprising. But this was truly a great opportunity for them to have. And I mean, as they reiterated throughout the broadcast as well, the way in which their seasons have been trending, this could very well be an important game for both teams' CFP chances. Oklahoma, again, with Mintier returning and with their running backs just being inconsistent, they have not had the prettiest stretch the last few games. Tennessee themselves understood that if they did lose this one, man, they definitely take a tremendous drop down, and it'd just give them another tough, unnecessary loss on the season that they did not need to deal with. So they had to go in and they had to handle their business. It almost got bad from the very tip of the first drive. Like, the very first play. And you get a massive loss of yardage due to a fumble. Like, how the hell are you that unsettled already on your own home turf? That in itself was already a terrible omen for how this game would go. At the very least, they could say that they would get bailed out a little bit. I haven't watched that much Oklahoma football. Admittedly, not keeping up with every single Oklahoma game that comes on. It would be hard to do. Why is it that every single time I see them play this man, Guillory, he's one of their corners, D-backs, I don't even know. Every single time the team they are facing off against the Sooners target the shit out of this man like it's nothing. And he falls for it every single time. Like, I had a deal as an Ohio State fan with last year's Davison Igbinosun getting penalized into oblivion game after game after game. And I don't know how good this Guillory person is necessarily, but this is just not okay. They target him and he gets picked on, gets baited into a penalty. You cannot make this shit up. And it would happen for more times down the game. Down the rest of the game. Like, how hard is it to... I can't fathom that shit. I can't. I'm no Oklahoma fan, so I don't know how this would necessarily feel. But that's the worst, man. That is the worst. Like, he got to step it up. Because I'm sure he's somewhat good. You got to be able to overcome that shit, especially in big games like this. You can't be having that. And granted, Tennessee, right after that happened, they get it cooking. Browns was the second, got himself a good little catch in, and they got torched for 37 yards down the field before they had Brandon Staley get in for a 5-yard touchdown catch. Oh, wait, no. Braylon Staley. Holy shit. My fault. Nevertheless, they managed to, even with that tremendous setback early on, still get themselves on the board first. But a quick theme to note for all these damn Tennessee games, and honestly, that's a good way to look at this from an expedited view. Their second drive went just as well, following them forcing Oklahoma into a punt. When your defense is playing that good and when your offense is consistently driving down the field, you are giving yourself a good enough chance to continue to impose your will and your hold on the game in terms of scoring and in terms of control of the ball. That makes sense. Yet, why is it that in these big games, Tennessee is consistently failing to do the one thing that you have to do when you are consistently driving down the field? You have to finish drives. You have to. And at multiple points, at pivotal moments in this game and others, go back to the Alabama game, and yeah, that's a little bit of a foreshadowing into what I have to get into a little later. They can't do it to save their lives. You get a massive chunk play to one of your players down the field. Now, granted, I didn't have that on live, right? Because, again, I'm flickering back and forth in between different stuff. And, again, to round that off, man, I gotta talk about that, even if this is a college football video. But that's besides the point right now. Okay, I cut the shit back on, and I see that Oklahoma got themselves the ball back with R. Mason Thomas pulling some kind of muscle, okay, and he's still just running down the field, stiff-arming multiple defenders and just carving through the whole offense of Tennessee to get himself an apparent score. I didn't know what happened. They put it on the replay, and I couldn't believe it. Now, granted, there's nothing that Joey Aguilar can do in that situation. You're in an RPO play, and his eyes are looking in a completely different direction over to the left side of the field. And in comes Heineke, one of their linebackers, completely doing a great job of blowing up the entire play. He puts that fucking pain in Aguilar, and he drops the ball. And R. Mason Thomas gets it. But again, I don't know what happened over this course of time, because as he's running, he pulls something. The fact that he was still able to get himself a scoop and score in that situation is definitely fucking impressive. And that is why he's one of the better defensive players, or one of the more highlighted defensive players out in the nation when it comes to that position. No question about it. But he would miss an extensive amount of time. I don't really think that he ever got back in the game like that. Because at that point, they're just trying to make sure that he's 100% ready to go. Nevertheless, that would end up tying the game. And that is just, it's like they continued to truck down the field, getting some decent runs in, but not really being able to sustain much of anything long enough. Oklahoma, in their offense, like they themselves were not on much, okay? But you have to understand this. You let a team linger around in the game for long enough, and you're going to fuck around, and you're going to allow some crazy shit to happen. Now, this was a good drive from Tennessee heading into the start of the second quarter. But you miss the fucking field goal. Okay, just hear about these scoring drives from Oklahoma in the second quarter. Again, to expedite it a little bit, and you'll understand my point. They start at their 20-yard line and go 43 yards for a field goal. They start at their own 41-yard line and get another field goal. And they get an easy start at Tennessee's 28-yard line and get themselves another field goal. Two of those field goals, and honestly, I'm going to say this right now. This Tate Sandal guy is fucking good. Yo, the fact that this man had back-to-back drives with 55 and 51-yard field goals in college, and he was just putting them right through the uprights like it was nothing. That was great, and they needed those points on the board at the time. But they weren't touchdowns. All of them with some semblance of a short field to work with as well. And especially these last two. You want to know why? Because there are moments with Aguilar, it seems like, he's definitely one of the more accurate quarterbacks out there. But he'll have some moments sometimes that just make you scratch your fucking head. I mean, like, what in the absolute fuck? What is going on? There's no reason for some of these passes to be thrown by him. Like, you just decide to throw a fuck it ball down to Oklahoma's goal line, essentially, and you get fucking lurked. Deservedly. And then, yet another game with this bullshit in terms of momentum-killing plays heading into halftime situations. All Tennessee has to do in this situation with 1:08 left is just protect the football. Protect the fucking ball. Get down the field. Get yourselves a field goal to potentially even up the game. You don't need it all in one play. You don't need the touchdown per se. And yet, again, something gets in Aguilar's mind that tells him, hey, we're going to go ahead and we're going to chuck up another deep ball down the field for no reason. And again, he promptly got picked off by Spears Jennings that time to give them another easy field to work with. He got a great return and bam, they're right back in Tennessee territory with a chance to get easy points with just 16 seconds left on the clock. They didn't even need to do anything on offense. All they had to do was just pick up a few yards on a run. That was it. Now, it's not like Tennessee, at least compared to how it looked in the Alabama game, it's not like they were out of it. But how many times are you going to continue to suffer plays like that early and then think that you can consistently crawl back into these games over time? Now, yes, they were looking pretty good. Their defense was still on the money. Like, they still hadn't allowed an offensive touchdown from the Sooners yet. So the fact that this was even a 6-point ball game in and of itself is a crime because, again, you're not finishing the fucking drives. But at the very least, they did start off the second half hot. Staley just streaks down the field wide open for a 54-yard touchdown. Just a matter of one play. That's it. And then as Oklahoma was driving, they got some pretty good all-around contributions. They had Mateer get a nice run-in while also managing to involve their running backs a little more. Yet, even with Robinson getting a good toe to the rock here, Tennessee managed to get a hold of him. They snuck a punch out in so cleanly, and they got the ball back. But with them barely being able to move, it gave Oklahoma another short field to work with. And what do you know? In just a matter of 5 plays, they had Mateer rifle one down to Isaiah Satania III. And then it was all a running attack for the rest of the drive, with Robinson getting a 4-yard touchdown run here to make this a 23-17 ball game. You need one drive. You need one drive. One fucking drive in this spot. And you go 3-and-out. You go downs on some weird shit. And this one, don't get me started on this one. Because it honestly was a decent, it looked like a promising drive. But on 4th and short in Oklahoma territory, I get that Gilbert had already missed a kick. I get that he might not have the strongest leg, as evidenced by their loss in the Georgia game, which again is their own doing per se. He's had those moments, but that one still, like I said in that recap, y'all fucked around with calling the time out and just running play after play instead of getting the easy part done and kicking the field goal, and he overthought it. And he missed. Like, that was just some bullshit. But this, even if that happened, you mean to tell me that you have less faith in Gilbert making the kick, and you're putting more faith in this Van Dorselaar guy? I had to look up who this man was. He dropped the fucking ball. It was clean in his hands. It was a great pass from Aguilar. And he drops this shit. And I'm like, how the fuck is this possible? Then they bring up the devastating hit. This nigga had only 2 catches on the season. Oh, but it gets better. He hadn't had a catch since September. And not even to... I'm pretty sure that catch came, if I'm not mistaken, as I'm seeing this, yes, against UAB for 5 yards. So he had not caught a ball since September 20th. He might not have even appeared in a fucking game playing. This man is a freshman, and he had not played long enough, clearly. Since then, you're putting less faith in a clearly more experienced kicker compared to a guy you had barely been utilizing all season long, and your idea was to make him a primary target or a primary read on a pivotal play in fucking SEC action. What the fuck was the idea there? That's a situation where you gotta look at Hypo and just question, like, what the like, yes, there's an innovative offensive mind there, but sometimes, man, like, bro, you could have put faith in any one of your wide receivers. I know that you're trying to give them something that they possibly would not expect. I understand that. Catch them by surprise. Come on now, bro. Even then, that didn't even initially hurt them because their defense was just that good. I mean, yet again, the Sooners made some progress, but they got a clean deflection on one of Mateer's passes as the wide receiver again just popped it up, and they got themselves an interception right back. Great field position. I'm like, okay, you got a chance. This is still a 2-possession ball game. But at the very least, their defense is still trying to show up and make plays for them to get them back into this. And they technically would. Right at the 2-minute warning, Matthews would get himself a touchdown here to make this even more interesting. Yet in just a matter of 2 plays. Oklahoma would get themselves a rushing touchdown. Robinson himself was trying to play it smart. They already had the advantage. He stopped himself just short of the touchdown to make Tennessee waste a timeout, I suppose. But John Mateer on the ensuing play just had the most wide open rushing lane. And you're thinking, that's a time for you to have a goal line stand. You just allow him to walk right into the end zone? I don't know about that option. Nevertheless, they would get themselves a 33-24 lead. And Tennessee themselves, although it took them a while to get down there anyways, they got themselves a chance to go for a field goal, and they took it. But, again, onside kicks, recovering them is a very difficult task, and Tennessee would not get that to happen here. So, Oklahoma would go to Neyland Stadium and win 33-27. Now, again, on its head, it's not all that bad per se, but at the same time, again, for Tennessee, this was a winnable game. It was. Yet, every time you get yourself into a situation like this, you can't finish off drives in one way or another at one point in the game, whether it be earlier, whether it be later. It bites you in the fucking ass. And you lose off that shit. Mateer didn't even have a touchdown pass in this game. And they still won. He was formidable on the ground as usual. And for Robinson as well, it takes some of the pressure off, even though Mateer still had 16 runs on the ground. He himself had 16 rushes for 115 yards and a touchdown in this game. So again, if Oklahoma can consistently get that kind of work from the overall running back core, not just Robinson, but at least, with the few games that he's had over the past few, he's probably starting to gain a little more trust So that is something that could develop over time. They're gonna need it if they want to be serious about contending. And at the very least, they definitely shoot back up in terms of their odds with the win. Isaiah Sategna III would have 6 receptions for 68 yards, and Dion Burks would have 6 receptions for 45. Man, Heineke and Lewis, this brother was everywhere. Even if he had just a half sack, the man had so many fucking hits and pressures in this game. Aguilar was fucking going through it back there. I kid you not. And he also had some pretty good fucking just tackles in the open field as well. Like, I'm not gonna lie. And Heineke just being pretty much everywhere at that point. He was injured for a second and came right back in. Managed to get 13 tackles and the aforementioned sack fumble. So, hey, man, credit to them. As for the Volunteers, Aguilar had 3 touchdowns on 64.4% completion and 393 yards while also having 2 interceptions. Is there even a way for me to explain this? Again, creativity is the name of the game. But, again, there is just something so ironic about you not being able to do the simple shit right. Like, you work that hard to put your players in the best positions to succeed. Yet, when you need timely conversions, you're not getting them. Like, you thought Oklahoma was just going to come in with their front 7 and let you dominate the rushing attack? You knew that wasn't going to happen. But you still have to put forth some kind of effort. They lost Thomas. Okay? They lost R. Mason Thomas earlier in the game. They had a slew of other injuries themselves. And Tennessee as well, to their credit, they had some offensive linemen go down. It was a weird game in terms of injuries on both sides. So you can't necessarily not account for that here. You gotta give that some credit and some merit. Fair enough. But in what universe do you think that running the ball 35 times for just 63 yards is okay as an offense? One-dimensional as shit. And you thought that that was going to allow you to prevail in this game. Okay. Sure. Matthews had 3 receptions for 76 yards. And a touchdown, and Braylon Staley had 5 receptions for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. Brownsville II also had 6 receptions for 68 yards, and Davis also had 5 receptions for 62 yards. Boy. Man, they gotta get it together. Like, there is no way. Man, oh my goodness. Like, it's every time with them in a big game situation. And again, sometimes, like they've proven, they'll come out on top for sure, but that's just not a recipe for success all the time. It isn't. And I can't sit here and act like that's the case. Man, oh boy. This one is absolutely just... I mean, where do I even start with this number 23 USC at Nebraska game? Now, again, I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did note as I was tracking it a little bit that Cornhuskers drew first score here with Dane Key, the former Kentucky Wildcat, getting himself in for a score. It felt like things were very defensive for the most part, and despite not really being into the whole thing. And I mean, at times, USC was able to break through, Like, I saw a few plays here where their rushing attack was going. King Miller had a solid start to this game. Before you knew it, they were in goal-to-go territory, but the Cornhuskers held up, and you also had them get another dumb penalty. And they did manage to get themselves a field goal, so it's like, hey, there you go. You got to start somewhere in a game that could be as sneakily competitive as this one. Now, again, I didn't watch it all, so I missed some context, even though USC themselves would manage to get another field goal in, as Maava would get some running going here, but it wasn't nearly enough. Then, as I cut that off, you had Nebraska go up by 8 with Johnson, possibly the best player they have on their team at a skill position right now. Or maybe it's just the fact that they rely on him so much. And I mean, there's definitely a reason to in that situation. But either way, they would take it and go up 14-6. And that's essentially how the half would end. Now, I'll get to this in a second, I promise. Because, man, I got to talk about this shit. But as I was watching that madness unfold in a totally different sport, stuff just got incredibly weird in this game. Like, I don't know. You mean Maava did get picked off again, and overall he was heavily inaccurate in this game. That's credit to the Cornhuskers defense. But the USC themselves would also force a sack fumble on Rhule in their own territory and get the ball back. Then you had a turnover on downs. And before you knew it, I get back to a little bit of this drive right here in between a TV timeout and everything, and then I see that there's a completely different quarterback in for Nebraska. And I'm like, okay, cool. This Latif person apparently was a true freshman, as they alluded to later in the broadcast. Like, okay, he seems like a solid enough runner. But I was wondering where the hell Dylan Raiola was at. And then they mentioned, as I saw him post, that he would be out for the rest of this game. And then it got worse from there, because there was a report stating that he had suffered a broken fibula and would be out for the rest of the season. Leaving it all on this person in Latif to make something happen for them in this game. And he just couldn't. This might have been some of the first reps. Well, I don't know about some of the first reps. They've had a few blowouts this season, so he's probably gotten some time. But to ask him to go up against this USC squad and try to give them some life from the quarterback position out of relief is just a tough ask. Now, he almost made it happen. I mean, he got them in territory, but the kicker for Nebraska ended up missing. And that would immediately lead to USC scoring a touchdown with Maava toting it for back-to-back 16-yard gains. And again, I did not see in real time. The stuff is just tough for the Cornhuskers. No intent to run there. They would manage to take a lead in the fourth quarter with a field goal, but USC marched right back with Miller pounding it right into the end zone for a score. And from there, it was just kind of a stalemate. I mean, both teams had chances to close this out. And initially they wouldn't. But Nebraska, with their stop, would get another chance. Now, they were backed up on their own territory off of a beautiful punt from the special teams contributor punter for the Trojans. Great punt. Back on their own 4-yard line. And at that moment, as the broadcast team was saying, you need to score on this drive. You can't rely on running the ball the entire time. You can't. They did. Or at least attempted to. They mismanaged this so fucking horribly. Now, the first couple I do get, you're trying to back yourself or give yourself enough space to work with. So having Johnson started off is okay. Latif, it was also a broken down play here on this pass that he dropped back into. And if he just stands there for too much time, I mean, bro, they're going to crash in and sack the shit out of him. So it made sense for him to step up, scramble, and slide there. But then you get to them wasting 36 seconds in between plays. And just to settle for a fucking run. I didn't understand that shit. And as a result, it went right down to the 2-minute warning with them barely even making any progress as it was. You needed a chunk play at some point. And yeah, they would finally drop back to pass. And yet you just settle for a fucking weak-ass screen instead of trying to push the ball down the field, maybe draw a penalty even. Just do what you can do to get a massive amount of yardage in a short amount of time. Why are you doing, what was the point of that? I don't get it. And it put Latif in a situation where he still had to scramble for his life, but then try his hardest to conserve clock. And it's like, it's going to be hard for you to pull off both. So you already flopped this fucking drive right here, but you get into 4th and 1 with you already wasting a minute and 55 seconds plus off the clock, calling just run play after run play instead of trying to effectively move the ball down the field in a 2-minute drill. Did not make any sense to me. As passive as they called this game for Latif, though, they still could have at least had a chance to get down the field, if not for Johnson, unprompted, untouched, and unguarded, slipping on his own step. He slipped and fell for a no gain. I kid you not. They tag him down. Just like that, that is how the game ended. One of the more anti-climactic ones you'll see. USC would pull it off with a 21-17 victory. And this, again, is it a tough situation for Nebraska to lose Dylan Raiola? Yes. Unfortunate that he is out for the season. You hope that he can take the offseason to recover well. This could have been a pivotal year for him. And to lose out on that opportunity is definitely just massive. You gotta hold out hope there. But even then, even if he is in this game, could we really sit here and say that Nebraska would pull this off? We know what they have consistently done against AP-ranked teams. It's always something that causes them to lose. In fact, they're not going to beat these allegations. This game would mark their 29th straight loss against an AP-ranked team. For one reason or another, you can't bear to beat the best of the best. And until they can consistently prove that, it's like, how do you expect to be taken seriously? How do you expect to level up? Because for as good as Matt Rhule has done so far with turning around this program, if you're not going to do that, you're essentially in the situation that Deion Sanders is in right now. Not to talk too much about it, but you saw what has happened to Colorado over the past few weeks in between getting absolutely ran through by Utah 53-7 last week and then to lose in week 10 to Arizona 52-17. Legitimate players in their own conference that they seemingly, even in year 3 of his time there, still stand very little chance against. And yes, Colorado themselves, even if you want to look at it, they beat Iowa State in that time. Before all of this bullshit. So it's got to take something for Nebraska to eventually overcome that shit, because they're not going to really reach that new height until they can slay that beast. It is as simple as that. And again, it doesn't help that you're playing so passively with your backup. You have to understand what's at stake in this game. And yeah, you're trying to protect him as best as you can. But at the same time, you gotta play to win. You gotta play to win. And the fact that they had this man Latif go for all these short passes, I shit you not, he literally finished with just a yard per pass attempt and went 5 of 7 for 7 fucking yards. I don't care how great the rushing attack was for Nebraska in this game, and really just Johnson by himself, 29 yards for under 65, 29 rushes for under 65 yards and a touchdown. Whatever. That's cool. If you can't be competent with throwing the football in today's action, especially when you're going up against a West Coast offense like USC, I mean, what chance do you think that you realistically have? Seriously. Now, for what it's worth, Nebraska's defense was so great that Maeva himself didn't even really fare all that better, to be honest, in terms of passing. Like I said, he only completed 39.1% of his passes and had 135 yards and a pick. But they still tried. They still gave it a shot, and it ended up paying off for them. They can say that. They can still say that they established the run effectively, too, with both. Well, all of their rushers combined for 214 yards and a touchdown led by 129 yards and a rushing touchdown for King Miller, continuing his great substitution for Waymon Jordan to this point. I mean, you can't get much better than that. But something's got to give at some point. I mean, damn, like, enough is enough. I thought this game would be more riveting. I truly did. You know, Utah and Cincinnati have definitely flip-flopped over the season. They've been about even, and they've had their fair share of highs and lows. They do similar things well, and I just thought that this would be way closer. When I got into it, though, by the time I actually got fully into it, it was just it was weird. Like, they were already down 24-7 at this point. And Brendan Sorsby, before I even cut it on, he threw a fucking pick, and the Bearcats managed to get it back off of a fumble. Still, that didn't do anything for them, because they ended up being just way too, like, I don't know about their decision making towards the end of the half. Like, I mean, granted, it's too deep for you to kick a field goal. But okay, at that point, I'm thinking, if you gotta go for a Hail Mary, go for a Hail Mary. Go down swinging. And they line up in that formation. Brendan Sorsby drops back. You want to know what this man does? Man takes the 3-step drop. He steps up ever so slightly. And instead of chucking that shit deep, he goes like these. For the shortest pass you could possibly have in a situation like that. Now, I know that it had not been a great first half for them. They were down 24-7. But if you're settling for a fucking 9-yard check down in this situation, knowing that you need points on the board, you know how little faith you have to have in yourself to do that? That right there was just, like, what in the world, right? But hey, I mean, to their credit, Cincinnati got right back into it seemed. You know, they got the stop to start out and then managed to get an 88-yard touchdown. So I'm like, okay, 10-point ball game yet again. They also, similarly to the Maryland game, not similarly to the Maryland game, but I guess Tennessee as well, they would force Utah into throwing an interception. I don't really understand this pass from Devin Dampier at that point. He had been doing well in terms of throwing the football. Now it's just an inexplicable decision. And yet still, they could not get out of their own territory. And Utah just went right back to town. Now, again, some solid runs here. That's what they're going to do. The fact that Bray is a true freshman and they rely on him like that is absolutely crazy, but it must be worth it. Nevertheless, when it came to this play right here, that's when I knew it was done. And also to tie it back into the Tennessee game, that's how you catch a fucking ball and make a fucking play. Because this Whittemore dude himself also had just 2 catches on the season and also hadn't played in a long amount of time. But what did he do on this play? He actually reined in the fucking catch. And then he managed to make a few people miss, get a little shifty with it. And he got himself in the end zone for an 11-yard touchdown. That's how you make a fucking play right there. So yeah, again, Von Dorsalaar again owns a lot of fucking blame on that play too, even if I'm going to go after Heupel for even trusting him in the first place. But when you can do stuff like that, you're going to earn more opportunities. I went out after that point because I'm like, there's just, Cincinnati didn't stand any chance after that. The Utes then proceeded to get a fucking 75-yard punt return touchdown. Then I didn't see because, again, I left at that point. And, again, they eventually won this game with Bird Ficklin. Yet again, getting another touchdown in garbage time. On a fucking game on ESPN. They managed to win 45-14. Yeah. Not much to speak of there. It was Devin Dampier in this game, to look at the numbers, had a combined 291 yards and 2 touchdown passes with an interception. Again, 51.6% completion. By comparison. Yeah. Wayshawn Parker had 17 rushes for 104 yards and a touchdown. As for their receivers, it was really about Davis here, who had 8 receptions for 132 yards and a touchdown in this game. This is yet another game from Brendan Thorsby this season that I just really don't know how to defend. Because again, he can be a very good dual threat quarterback. He can be. But in what world? What the fuck was he on? Was he smoking? What kind of drugs was this nigga taking before the game? Okay, 11 of 33 passing. Yes, you heard me right. What? And again, literally, I shit you not. Just to bring that into even more emphasis here. Despite having a 33.3% completion percentage on starting caliber volume. Okay, they mentioned in the first half that as it was winding down, the man had already thrown 5 fucking passes out of play. And it's going to take a massive amount of strength for you in some of these cases, especially with him being under duress. Credit to the Utah defense there. you're going to need a lot of strength to get that ball out and past the line of scrimmage towards a wide receiver in the area to have it go out of play and not get penalized for it. He'd already done that 5 times. 5. And you couldn't throw the ball deep on a Hail Mary attempt when you absolutely needed to chuck one deep. That's the bullshit. That's the bullshit right there. Like, I don't... Yo, like, come on. The fact that... I mean, even their wide receiver had just 2 catches for 133 yards and a touchdown in this game. But, bro, like... This is just flat out... It was flat out bad. It was flat out bad. They only lost the turnover battle by 1, and they had a similar amount of rushing yards, even though some garbage time can be taken into account there. Granted. Look at this time of possession. Look at this shit. That's all you need to know for that. That just shows you that they were literally just flat out bad. You can't even get past your own side of the field. And if you do, the defense is licking their chops knowing they're going to be all right. Man. Okay. All right, I gotta cap off that game action there. And again, I don't know. Like, I guess I could keep it in there in terms of the incorporation of baseball talk. We'll see about that, I guess. But, man, into some other developments surrounding college football. In Nebraska, before the game even took place, they signed Matt Rhule to a 2-year extension. Again, fair, with how he has been working to turn them around. And again, there's been progress there, but I'm not going to, go too deep into it because I already said this point. Like, if you are not at a stage soon where you can start beating ranked competition and truly beat the best of the best in your own conference, you're not going to be taken as a legitimate threat. It's hard to establish that when you have not and still have yet to overcome that. This one is... I don't know how to view this one. This is just very, very strange. It's strange. Like, what? Good strange, bad strange? I don't know. Just strange. We get into the fact that Brian Kelly got fired. And, it gets talked about around all the sports shows. And, you have First Take on at this point. Sometime last week, they talk about the whole situation with LSU, and the name Scott Woodward gets mentioned, the AD for LSU, and the point gets made that the man owes $130 million combined to coaches who aren't even serving at the schools anymore. As was conveniently brought up, he worked, this is from Paul Fonbaum here, he worked for Texas A&M when Jimbo Fisher was signed, and we know how steep that damn contract got. And then not to mention, he has just been with LSU over this time. $130 million to 2 people. And they show his face. They show a picture of him on the damn display. And again, to some of the points being made here, and I mean, Stephen A. Smith is honestly right in saying this. It would happen to other people. The same thing is constantly going on when other players of sorts, and I guess other members of different teams have been called out. So, to that extent, it should be no different when talking about an AD who, again, might not necessarily be all bad, but you are literally getting yourself in debt to pay niggas that aren't even hired right now for you. You have to pay them now. It is like, that's no bueno. Definitely lighthearted stuff, but feels like you could bear to have that be the full extent of the matter. Just getting joked on a little bit. And in no way am I insinuating that anything that goes on the program, even with the amount of influence that it might consistently have, and even with the viewership that it continues to have over this time, I'm not implying that they're responsible for anything that other entities and other companies would do with their personnel in the real world. Anything they might say or do on the show does not have a one-to-one impact, in most cases, with what other establishments choose to do with their people. But what I can say is that when you have a show like that, getting that much press, and that much overall coverage, and that much overall attention, word gets around. And I don't know from where this was heard originally, but this now has real world implications on Scott Woodward, our buddy. Because when probed about LSU's coaching search, the fucking governor of Louisiana in Jeff Landry had a little something to say about it. And essentially, this man said he would much rather have Donald Trump hire the next LSU head coach than Scott Woodward. Damn. For real? And they say this man is on the verge of having his job lost and endangered because of those comments from Landry. And it's like, yo, are you serious? Yeah, they got him out of there. It's like, damn. Again, like I said, they aren't necessarily responsible for LSU's decision to do that, and then having the governor somehow, for some reason, it had to be a fucking slow day at the office or something. Why the fuck? It's, again, strange. Why the fuck is that one of the first things that gets, first pieces of information that gets relayed to him? I don't know. But fuck it. I don't know. And I'm never going to know. It's just a little that is, again, you seriously hope that, like, Woodward can manage to shake back, because again, for him to lose his job, again, in some way, shape, or form as a result of all this is kind of tough. But man, from an outside point of view, bruh, that shit is just crazy. Like, again, I'm not to be taken seriously here. Again, not insinuating anything, but you want to talk about a literal alley-oop. They roasted the shit out of that man on there. And they got so much coverage from that. So much attention from that it got into the fucking ears of the governor of Louisiana. And he was prompted, compelled even, to say something. And maybe do something. Like, this shit is wild. That's wild, man. There's really not much more I can say about that. It's just hard to truly grasp something like that going down. And for the last development here, Auburn fired Hugh Freeze over the weekend. It makes sense to me. I don't have much to add there. But anytime, again, Auburn is not nearly what they were, and that's why I do agree with a statement that I saw from Joel Klatt on his podcast. At least it was mentioned in a headline to me, but that does have a pretty good point in that Auburn's not even really that desirable of a job right now. They have been so far away from their winning ways. And right now, as it stands, when you look at it, when you look at this entire coaching cycle, next season, let's face it, sit back and ask yourself one damning question. Are they even the most desirable job in their own conference? Hell no. Hell no. You could make the case that Arkansas is more desirable as a job. And you know that LSU and Florida, man, especially with the attention that those things have gotten, yeah, you know those two are going to be at the top of everybody's list. And not to mention, too, like, Hugh Freeze just always got himself in these situations. They've been mediocre for way too damn long. And the fact of the matter is they have not lasted in the SEC. It's a matter of what have you done for me lately, and they haven't really competed all that much in their own conference. In fact, it got so bad that in this game against Kentucky, Kentucky had over like a 10-game losing streak in the SEC or something like that. And they broke that, beating you. What does that say about your program? So they had no choice but to move on at some point. I don't even think when you're dealing with something like that, that probably couldn't have waited until the end of the season. I'm not gonna lie. You gotta cut that off and let that go. It's as simple as that. But yeah, that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.